Tuesday, September 11th in Washington, D.C. was an absolutely gorgeous fall morning. It wasn't hot, it was warm, the sun was shining, the sky was an incredibly vibrant blue. If there were clouds at all, there were wisps of clouds. It was just one of those fall mornings in D.C. that are unparalleled. I was consulting at the time, and every Tuesday morning I had an 8 a.m. meeting with my clients. And so at 9 o'clock, I wandered out of the building to jump in a taxi and to get to Capitol Hill because my colleague and I had a meeting with the senator. And all of a sudden, my cell phone started to ring, and it was a friend of mine who was watching television in her apartment. And she said, "Hey, something weird is going on in New York City. I know you spend a lot of time on the Hill. Just know that something weird is going on to New York City. It looks like a plane ran into the Twin Towers." And then all of a sudden she said, "Oh my God." And as she was watching, the second plane went into the tower. And I thought, wow, something clearly horrible is happening. It doesn't make sense that 2 planes ran into the towers. So I called the Hill, the office on the Hill, to find out if we were still going to have our meeting. And the young woman who answered said, "Oh yes, of course, the senator is expecting you." And I said, "Are you sure? There's something going on in New York." And she said, "Oh, no, we're still having the meeting." And I said, "Okay, well, we'll see you soon." We jumped in a taxi, we went up to the Hill. We were standing in line at the Russell Senate Office Building, which is right across the street from the Capitol building. And everyone, of course, was chattering about something going on in New York City. It was not yet clear exactly what was happening, if it were some sort of a weird accident or terrorist related or whatever it may have been. And all of a sudden, someone said, "Oh my gosh." And at that point in time, the plane had plowed into the Pentagon. What I found odd at this point was that they still let us come into the Senate office building. And so we went through the machine to make sure we weren't carrying any weapons, and we put our bags through the x-ray machine, picked up our bags. Everyone's sort of starting to scurry around much more quickly than people usually would be. We went upstairs to the 5th floor and walked into the office, and the young woman, her eyes were huge, and she said, "The senator has canceled your meeting." And we left the office, and people are starting to come out of their offices, moving very rapidly. And the Russell Senate Office Building in DC is connected to the Hart Senate Office Building, and the Hart Senate Office Building has open stairwells. And rather than get caught in an elevator, which I didn't want to take, or a closed stairwell, I walked us to the Hart Senate Office Building so we'd have an open stairwell, and droves of people are walking down rapidly the 5 flights of stairs to get to the floor level. And as we came off the stairs, I looked to my left, and it was a sea of people running out of the Hart Senate Office Building. At that point in time, it became pretty clear that there was an attack going on. And as everyone is coming out of the Senate Office Building, we see these cars arriving. The drivers are arriving with the senators, who are all coming in the opposite direction because they knew that they had work to do. Well, the roads were closed. The metro was closed, if anyone would have even wanted to get into the metro at that point. At this point, we still didn't know that there had been a plane that had been aimed either toward the Capitol building or the White House. We worked in DuPont Circle, which was about 4.5 miles away. And so we began the trek back to DuPont Circle. And what was fascinating to me was the mass of humanity sort of spilling off of the hill. And while we were still on the hill, the planes, the fighter planes, scrambled over And it was the point in time where people said that they may have broken the sound barrier because it was this huge boom and the ground shook as though the world were ending. And I guess in a way our world was ending, the world to which we had become accustomed in this country ended that day. And so we were spilling off the hill, walked into, I believe it was the Capitol Hilton on New Jersey Ave, and found a bank of phones because cell phones weren't working well. It was very spotty at that point. And I called my dad and I told my dad that I was okay and that we were going to start walking back to the office. Well, if you've ever seen the movie Fiddler on a Roof, the end of the movie, they're exiled from their village and they just leave as a whole community and they move beyond their village, just like a parade. And that's what we did as we meandered those 4.5 miles from Capitol Hill to DuPont Circle. Sometimes the cell phones worked. We would hand them off to one another and let people call and tell people they loved that they were okay. I encountered this doctor who had come to DC for a conference from Berlin. She looked at me and she shook her head and she said, "Boy, you guys do not know how to handle this sort of thing." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, as soon as there would be some sort of an attack where they lived, the roads would be shut down immediately. All public transportation would be shut down and they would figure out how to leave in an orderly fashion." And to me, what was so interesting about her comment was the fact that no, we did not know how to deal with that because we really hadn't dealt with something like that before. Another thing I found fascinating was as we were walking 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 abreast down the main streets in Washington, D.C., down Massachusetts Avenue, New York Avenue, as we made our way back to DuPont Circle, we never could take a direct route because there were no direct routes to take. Places were cordoned off that I had no idea were federal buildings or federal facilities. Even if there were just one floor in a particular building, they would cordon off that building because it was a federal building of sorts. And so we'd walk along and then all of a sudden we'd have to veer off and go down another street and go down another street and go down another street. We finally made it back to the office and started watching what was going on television. We spent time there as a staff, maybe a handful of us at that point, 6 or 7 of us, just riveted, watching what was happening, finding out about the plane that had gone down in Pennsylvania, Flight 93, I believe it was, and how those people saved those of us who were near or around either the White House or the Capitol building, depending upon where that particular plane was going. And it never really dawned on me until the 10th anniversary when I was in divinity school, when we were commemorating the loss of life and the sacrifice that was made that day, that I really would have been even more in the thick of things than I was had that plane not been grounded in Pennsylvania. For the next several weeks, my apartment in DC is in the district. It's not in Virginia or Maryland. And there are a lot of embassies near my apartment in DC. And it was not uncommon to see a helicopter rise above the tree line and sort of survey the neighborhood, flying around the neighborhood, making sure that everyone was safe. It was not uncommon for a very long period of time after that to see military personnel in Humvees with machine guns and other artillery protecting those particular neighborhoods where the embassies were and are. I went to 2 funerals after 9/11. One for a person whom I knew. She was a member of the Federal Communications Bar Association. And another was for a woman whom I did not know, who was Ted Olson's wife, who died, Barbara Olson. And the person with whom I had gone up to Capitol Hill for the meeting had been in the Clinton White House. And she had known Barbara as a consequence of defending certain things that had happened in the White House. And Barbara had been working for a Republican congressperson. And so we went and celebrated the lives of those 2 women whose lives were lost when the flight from Dallas flew into the Pentagon. But it was a surreal time. It was a time of great discomfort because we didn't know how to handle that. As the doctor from Berlin had said to me, that they knew what to do in these situations. I was in the federal government after that, a couple of years after that, and by that point in time, there were certain procedures in order for particular people to be whisked out of Washington to be able to continue doing the work that they did. And in fact, one of those people was a boss of mine, and it was when I was with the Federal Communications Commission, and there was a place where they had created a place where the communications decisions could continue to be made so that we could continue to communicate with each other in the event that there might be another attack like we experienced on 9/11. We're better prepared than we used to be, and at the same time, what that has done, it has, I suppose, taken away a sense of innocence that we had before that day, on that beautiful, beautiful fall day on September 11th, 2001. And as someone who was in DC during the time, as someone who was an adult, having lived really a life of privilege for all sorts of different reasons, I am so thankful for the people who protected us and continue to protect us as we face uncertainty in this world, at home and abroad.